Hello, this is Dread, and today's video topic is going to be the full build guide showcase for the Sovereign Primordial Sword of Great Necromancy Enduring Protector minion build. Yeah, I said that right, minions. And we have a lot of them, well over 60. So the concept around this build is we're building around the ancestral skill given to us by the Sovereign Primordial Sword of Great Necromancy, the Summon Skeletal Squire. So normally it does a flat mana lock, and this is great because it means we can scale as much mana as humanly possible to try to get as many minions, although the mana lock does increase each time you summon a minion. But having this many minions, turns out, makes it feel really good. I was really worried about whether or not this was actually going to work when I started playing it, mainly just because I've played minions in Slormancer in the past, and they were definitely not the best back in the day. But now, apparently, it seems like as though they made some changes to it, because now they actually scale their elemental resistance and their armor based on your armor and elemental resistance. So minions are actually good in Slormancer, by the way. If you actually look at some of them, their attack speed, armor, elemental res, crit chance, and crit damage are equal to yours, meaning that I can scale all of those stats on my gear and not have to worry about a billion stats saying like, oh, minion should do this, minion should do that. And that makes it so much easier to actually build around and function. I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually surprised that not many other ARPGs does this, because this just seems to be the simplest way of going about minion stats and not having to care about all of these extra affixes and stuff like that. Now, of course, there might be some balancing issues here and there, but because most of our percent damage is coming from minion increased damage, it makes it so that even if I wanted to, like, let's say, stack all of this damage and stuff like that on top of my skeleton squires while also using a skill, it wouldn't really be that good, because right now, currently, I'm getting well over 3000% minion damage. The reason why being is there's a greater attribute currently that gives you 10% increased minion damage per minion owned, and this essentially gets doubled. All my minion percent increased damage gets doubled thanks to the sword, as it has a fat minion damage multiplier on it. And that means we end up with our 60 minions and all of our extra minions from our uniques. It means we end up with just a very, and I mean a very large amount of minion percent damage, to the point where all of our minions, each individual minion, at least the skeleton squires, are hitting for like 2.5 million each. That doesn't sound like that much until you realize I have 60 of them. Yeah, that's a lot, and we're nowhere near done yet, to be honest with you. Like, we're nowhere near done yet. I could push this even further. I just felt like this was a good time to stop, because I put like 4 nether pieces worth of investment into it, and I feel like as though if I kept putting nether pieces of investment, there would be some problems that would show up. The biggest problem right now, in my opinion, with minions is if you die, you have to resummon all your minions. Now, normally in a normal game, this wouldn't be that big of a deal, but because of the way that ancestral skills work, they have a cooldown on them, specifically the Squire one. So I kind of have to sit there and let the skeleton Squire kind of like rotate 60 times while I'm just sitting here and relaxing. It's kind of funny. It's not that big of a deal, to be honest. It's just kind of funny that, like, whenever I die, I just have to summon that many squires. Thankfully, we don't die that often. That's because of the way that we're stacking our armor and resistance. So our personal resistances and stuff like that are insane, because we have to scale our armor and resistance for our minions, but then we just have that, right? We just have that, which means we can just go to the moon in terms of scaling. So right now I have 145,000 armor and 51,000 elemental res. This combined allows us to utilize a rune, the Thornbite rune given to us by Corey Ironbender. So what this says is whenever this rune procs, we get a shield of 9,866 damage. And then this can stack all the way up to 197,000 if we keep, using it. And that's the sum of our elemental and armor res currently, armor stuff. Now, what we can do is we can run the rune after we've killed 36 enemies. We trigger our effect rune, and apparently, minions killing things counts as us killing things. It kind of makes sense because all secondary skills kind of work like this. Like all the other secondary skills, they just scale with minion damage. So it makes sense in Slormancer, but it took me a second to realize that like this actually works. Now, whether this should work or not, I don't know, but like I'll be honest, it's just a minion build. Let's be real, right? It's just for fun. That's the beautiful thing about Slormancer is like I don't have to worry about these balance issues because this game's meant to be fun. It's not meant to be balanced, so who cares, right? But yeah. Now, the last problem that we have is scaling flat damage. Unfortunately, we don't have that many avenues to scale flat damage. The best avenue we currently have, because we're so incentivized to stack so much mana, we can actually go, and we're always mana locking our stuff, we can always go with raw lock, which gives us 21% of our mana as raw damage. This ends up working. Now, 52,000 raw damage actually isn't that much raw damage, to be honest with you. You could get way more than this if you did some other cheese, but the problem is all of those other cheese methods require you to not be an Enduring Protector. And let me sell you on Enduring Protector real quick while we're at here, right? So Enduring Protector is essentially the tank of Slormancer. He gets a lot of just chonk. He just gets an absolute fuck ton of chonk. And the main reason being is because he gets a bunch of block. So block, the way it works is whenever you have some block stacks, right? And you block an attack, you take no damage, and then it destroys half your block stacks. But with the way that the Enduring Protector works, every single time we block, we instantly shoot up to 30 stacks thanks to a combination of Crush Shield and, of course, Enduring Protector. And then we gain, I think 2 block stacks per second or something like that. And that allows us to just block a lot of incoming hits. So that's great. But the main reason, the second reason we're doing this is because there's a node called Full Plate Armor. It gives us a massive 100% increased armor. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a lot. Like that's a lot of percent armor. If you go and look around, that's a insane amount of percent armor, but it makes us have less movement speed. And we mitigate this by grabbing the Ancestral Legacy node here, Unstoppable Force, where movement speed can no longer be decreased. That helps out a lot because, either that or we run the Ultimatum, but the Ultimatum makes us slow. So movement speed's actually really important for this character because the way that the minions work is they seem like as though they inherit the movement speed of my character. So the faster that I move, the faster they can move. And I can tell you, the more movement speed I put in this character, the better my clear got. So heavily suggest putting as much movement speed as possible on your character, as making your minions actually walk around and kill things is very important for the feel of this build. So I'd heavily suggest doing that. But the third reason why we're an Enduring Protector after all those tangents is the massive Elder Armor passive at the top of the tree. Your chest item stats are added twice. Now that doesn't sound like that much, but let me tell you, it is. So this is our chest piece. Right now we're getting double this. That is an absolute insane amount of max mana, percent max mana, armor, percent armor, some Ellie res. I think you probably swap that out eventually with attack speed. That would probably be insane, by the way. And then all damage reduction, area damage reduction, and movement speed. And I'm pretty sure, that is just fucking absurd. The amount of mana this chest gives me, it's crazy. It's an absolute fuck ton of mana thanks to, of course, Elder Armor. And this leads to us just having a lot of mana. We're at 250,000 and I'm not even done abusing nether gear. I actually stopped crafting nether gear mainly because I ran out of percent and flat mana pure stats, because I need to farm some more. But yeah, that's just, oh my god, that chest just gives us so much. And all of that combined leads us to just having a good build. Now, a few caveats. They don't heal. You have to resummon them. The minions do not heal. You have to resummon them. But thankfully, resummoning the squires is pretty easy because you just hold down right click, and you actually want to hold down right click because there's a unique that gives you a bunch of crit based on the amount of ancestral skills you cast recently. So you definitely want to be holding down that right click like I am in all the gameplay. But then that resummons your squires, and then every so often you can resummon your little shitter minions. They don't actually do that much damage, and they don't actually serve that much of a purpose. The only reason that we're summoning them is for the extra percent minion damage currently, right? The skeleton squires do most of the work, right? They are the bread and butter of the build. But yeah, cool. That's all great and dandy. And I really enjoyed this build. It can't really do the forge that well. The forge is like kind of annoying with this build because whenever you go through an expedition and you go through the next phase, they all heal up, but they don't do that in the forge. So the forge run requires you to constantly resummon your minions if you don't have them to be tanky enough. But if you get them tankier than what I have right now, it's fine. But I was able to do a few Wrath 10 forges. It is possible. It's just more annoying. This build's actually way better at doing Primordial Nether than it is at the forge, which is kind of funny. But with all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go do something else. Bye. All right, I just want to give a quick in-game explainer of a lot of the stats that we're running on this character. So, like I said, first things off, running the Sovereign Primordial Sword of Great Necromancy. This build requires this item because we only get our Ancestral Skill from this item. So, you want to be getting this item before you play the build. I can tell you right now that, unfortunately, because of the way that the sword works, you want to have as much mana as possible and as much armor and Elirez. I can tell you right now, as I currently stand with the mana that I have, I finally have enough tankiness to take on Wrath 10 Forge. Unfortunately, like I said, the minions don't like get extra HP like they do in all of the other modes. So you can end up doing Primordial Nether way sooner than you can be doing like what Wrath 10 Forge or whatever. So just keep that in mind as you're playing this character. Like if you can't do the Forge, it's understandable. It's because you're probably not tanky enough. Because of the way that this build works, and we are tanky as fuck, right? We simply want to make our minions as tanky as humanly possible. So you want to just up that mana and up that armor and Elirez. That is the most important thing for you to do because we don't die. Our minions die. So we have to make sure that they're tanky. So like I said, make sure to scale as much mana, armor, and Elirez as humanly possible. The build itself scales so much damage that you kind of don't really need to care too much about damage. Right now, I only have like a little bit of attack speed, and I have like a decent crit chance when the Ancestral Strike buff is up. I'll show you in a second here. Just waiting for it. There you go. Ancestral Fervor. We're at 76% crit chance. Eventually, I was planning on getting a unique pair of gloves and slotting it somewhere else, probably on the bracers or a ring or something. Probably on this ring. We'll put the Ancestral Strike more crit multi thing, and that will almost cap us on crit. That was my plan with the Ancestral Strike Legacy, but we didn't really have time to do that. Eventually, you want to do that. You want to have a Netherrealm ring and then swap it over here, and then you'd end up getting enough crit to cap you out. Yeah, that's great. That's why we're running our skeletons that way. Is because we need to make them as tanky as possible. It's very, very, very important. So for gearing, actually for attributes are more important. Let's talk about attributes. So this attribute is very integral to the build. 10% increased minion damage for each minion under your control. So I'm going to take this node off. Look at that. Literally all of our damage coming from a single node because that's just how many minions we have summoned. So very important to understand that. We also get a decent amount of flat mana from the Zeal branch. We also get some crit chance from the Fury branch. We get like 4% and 6% here. And then we also get our armor into Res with this node. This is very important for us to scale a lot of elemental resistance because we're trying to scale as much armor on our gear as possible and then using the excess to turn into elemental res. As you can see here, yeah, like we're at like 50,000 elemental res and then we're at like 140,000 armor. We want more elemental res than this. That's because a lot of the dangers in the primordial netherworld and everywhere is elemental damage because they end up doing a lot of damage like on death effects and stuff like that. So you definitely want way more elemental res than I have currently, but you could probably end up getting that by just slamming as much armor as possible. So yeah, so that's our attributes. Let's talk about our actual gearing here. So for the helmet, as you can see, I went with a quadruple pure primordial setup with as much mana as humanly possible. Mana should be your priority, like 100%. If you can put percent mana and the flat mana on the base stats of your helmet with like triple pure, kind of like how I did with the chest here, that is what you should do. This right here, the base stats there, you should have that almost everywhere. That is the most important thing because that is what dictates your flat damage and how much HP your minions have. Because, you know, of course, the armor and the Res are scalars to your tankiness, but a direct modifier to your minion tankiness is as much mana as humanly possible. And everything else is just like armor. Armor is very important as well because, like I said, it makes your minions not instantly die to shit. Because you can have 250,000 HP, but if you have no armor, they're gonna fall over like flies, right? So then we have the amulet here. Mana, armor, crit multi. We do need some kind of crit multi so we can scale the damage even further, right? And eventually just some like crit chance and all that. And then this unique effect just gives us a lot of extra crit chance for free. You just hold right click and you'll just get access to the buff all the time. Here you go, Ancestral Fervor. It's just a lot of extra crit chance for free. Cool. For our chest here, as you can see, we are running the one node here, Elder Armor, which doubles this. So your chest is the most important piece of the build. You definitely want to save your triple pures for your chest, your base stats. Remember, the way that crafting works in this game, the higher it is in the, like the higher it is on the item, the more you get. So for instance, percent mana as a base stat gives you way more mana than mana as a rare stat. You see that? You see the huge difference? So the base stat and the rare stat and all those, they are like completely different. So it's kind of like a descending order, right? So the lower it is, the less modifier you get. The higher it is, the more. So you want your good modifiers to be at the top. Like I said, triple pure on the chest, triple pure base stats. Then I went for triple armor just to get as much armor as possible. That percent armor gets doubled, that Res gets doubled, that all damage reduction gets doubled. Because remember, our epic stats, unfortunately, the way that they work, most of them are completely useless to us. So we end up just filling them out with like movement speed and as much like reduction as possible, right? Like as much damage reduction so that, we don't die. Because remember, if we die, all our minions die, right? So it's very important. And then our cape here. Eventually you can swap this out for a different legendary effect, probably with like the armor multiplier instead with the Netherrealm craft, and then just put percent mana on the base and then put attack speed in the magic stat and stuff like that, and then probably flat mana in the rare stat, something like that. You definitely want the attack speed though. You definitely want like as much attack speed as possible. It's just like not as important as mana because having your minions not die is better than having infinite DPS, in my opinion, because having your minions die means that you have to spend longer doing this. So no one wants to do that. Then here, like I said, mana, armor, crit chance, same shit on different gear. This, whenever you're dealt damage, the damage cannot exceed this much damage. This is insanely strong when we're scaling Thornbite, and it also synergizes very well with the different item, which we'll be talking about. But essentially, when you start a zone, when you start one, you're not going to have any Thornbite stacks from your Thornbite rune, right? You're not going to have any stacks of this when you start a zone or whatever, right? So you need to be tanky enough to not instantly die when you're going into a new zone. So this helps out a lot. It makes us just not fucking instantly die. But it's combined with a ring, which we'll talk about in a second here. Here it is. So every second you restore 12,000 life. Life is restored equal to 5% of your mana lock. As you can see, we restore our entire life bar per second. So essentially, to kill us, enemies would have to do about like probably 3 hits on us in 1 millisecond or something like that. Very quickly. They'd have to kill us very quickly to make this work. This combined with this is just absolutely absurd tankiness for free. I went from dying every so often to being virtually immortal for the most part, so that helps a lot. The only time you die is if you take a lot of damage in one very large instance, but a lot of extra ticks. So like you can't just take one big thing because of the legendary belt. You have to take 3 big things. You can't just take one big thing, right? Because otherwise I'll instantly heal to full and then they have to do 3 hits on me again. So very important. Of course, other ring here. Eventually you'd want primordial with pure stats, but it was like pretty much exactly what you want on the ring. Boots here, same thing. You'd probably want actually a pure movement speed instead on this. You want as much movement speed as possible because like I said, it improves your clear. But of course, you know, you could put the movement speed in the magic stat instead or the rare stat and then have flat mana, percent mana on the base stat with the nether crafting, so you can end up with even more mana. You could probably get so much mana that your minions HP bars don't even move, to be honest. And you could probably just AFK the forge at that point, which would be cool. Other ring, same thing, percent max mana. Like as you can see, you get so much percent max mana. These triple pure max manas are like what you're looking for. These are like the solid like structure of your build. You want as much of that as humanly possible. Like you just want literally as much mana as humanly possible here. As you can see, we already have 300% percent. We want as much of that as possible, pretty much. Gloves here, we're going for these unique effects, these minion percent damage things. These are very important for a lot of extra percent damage, so make sure you grab them. You don't have to actually summon the minions from them. They don't do that much, but they're just kind of there, right? Which is good. You know, attack speed, crit damage. Eventually, you'd want double mana on the prefix here, and then move those stats elsewhere, right? Same thing here, like literally same thing, just mana. Literally, you just want as much mana as possible, and then figure out all the other stats later, because the mana and the armor are the most important stats for this build, because not having your minions die is literally the most important stat whatsoever, right? Like, just very important. And then for, like I said, for our tinkiness, for a rune, we run Thornbite rune. Whenever we kill stuff with our minions, we'll get a bunch of buffer. And of course, that just ends up being really good on top of all of our armor and Ellie res and stuff like that. That plus our block ends up making us very tanky. For our skills, we're running Grappling Hook. This is actually one of the reasons why we're playing Warrior, is because Grappling Hook, because of this node, the Captain Hook, making it so that we pull enemies in with the extra range and stuff like that. We want to pull enemies in so that the minions can kill them quicker, because they actually do a decent area of effect. So having them all concentrated in one spot means all your damage can be concentrated in one spot so they can kill stuff quicker. This node is just generically very strong, gives you a lot of less damage taken while running around. We have a lot of area damage reduction, but it does give us all that melee and projectile damage reduction very quickly. Then here, blinding enemies just makes them have a 50% chance to not hit you, which is cool. And then our other skill is Crush Shield, because we can have this. We can't have less than 15 stacks of block, which is very cool. We have this, so we gain a block chance per second, right? So we just have it on our bar. We're not using it. It just ends up making us tankier. And then on our tree here, armor, block stacks per second, so we get 2 block stacks per second. After blocking, we immediately gain 15, so we go down to 15 and then we gain 15. It's like really good even when we're at the low amount, so we're always above 30. This doesn't really matter. These nodes don't really matter. These nodes also don't matter. This node is just a bunch of armor. Like I said, we're using the Ancestral Legacy stone here. unstoppable force to solve that. So we don't want the, so we don't have to deal with the less movement speed. So we can scale movement speed instead. And then here, 100% damage reduced instead of like taking like I think like 25% or something like that. Then here, where chests are added twice. This is like literally the most important part of the build. This ends up being like a lot of extra mana and percent mana. So very important. And then for Ancestral Legacy Tree, we should talk about it. So here, all we care about is mana lock. Cool. And then raw damage based on our mana lock, because remember, their damage is based on our raw damage, our skill damage. So you want as much raw damage as possible. Right now we only have 126,000, but that's a good start. You could have a lot more if you did some other cheese on other classes, but this is the class that I found to be the best because you have the hook, you have the tankiness, your own innate tankiness. Then you have access to all of the mana scaling thanks to the Elder chest, right? All of this combined leads to a build that functions way better, in my opinion. But yeah, with all that being said, this has been Dread. Have a wonderful rest of your day, guys. Bye.